across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good bank holiday evening to you. I hope you've had a lovely day. Maybe you went to a barbecue. Maybe you just sat around and did nothing. That would be my perfect day, to be perfectly honest with you. But I hope you had a wonderful bank holiday Monday, whatever you're doing, and that you're nice and relaxed, because our phone-in, actually, at midnight, the talkback hour, is about not being relaxed. It's an extraordinary poll that says that 79% of Britons predict riots this summer. 79% of Brits polled said that they believe that there will be riots this summer. 83% are braced for a rise in shoplifting because of soaring bills, and 73% of people are also worried they will see a rise in homelessness and people going hungry. So the question I have for you is quite simple, really. Are you on the edge? And what has driven you to that edge? What is it about Britain today that has 79% of us predicting rioting come the summer months? Do you feel that Britain, even if you're not close to taking to the streets, do you feel that Britain is close to taking to the streets? And why do you think that is? If you had to list reasons why you think people are on the edge of taking to the streets and rioting, not protesting, rioting, why would you say that is? What do you think has driven people that far? That's the phone in at midnight, so please do give me a call. It's all about you that hour. There are no other guests, there is nothing else there. It is literally a pure hour of phone in. It's the only place you get it on this station, so make sure you give me a call. The number you're going to need is 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Also coming up in the next couple of hours before Talkback, we have Amy Fisher. Fabulous. I love an Amy Fisher day. Amy Fisher will be here, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. She'll be here to go through the papers for tomorrow. Tony Lee Morale is going to join me to talk about one of my favourite human beings that ever existed, and that is David Attenborough. Isn't he the grandfather we all wish we had? I totally do. So he's going to be talking to us as we see that life on this planet for David Attenborough is going to reach 100 years on Friday. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be chatting about the battle between Elon Musk and Sam Altman, the battle of the Titans, or as somebody has coined it, Godzilla versus the big lizard thing. Can't remember its name now, but anyway. Godzilla, King Kong, that's it. Godzilla versus King Kong. Godzilla is the big lizard thing. So that's what somebody's called it. So we're going to be talking about that as well. But before that, and maybe this is what will drive you to the streets this summer, is what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. We've already seen how it's affected things like mortgage interest rate increases. We've seen how it's affected already prices of petrol and diesel at the pump. And we've also seen the cost of everyday goods increase beyond what we were expecting because of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. Well, the tensions in the Strait spiked today following unverified reports of a military clash. Iranian media claimed that 2 missiles had struck a US warship near Jask Island, a report that the US military officially denied. Donald Trump has shared on social media that the US has shot down several small boats and that their Navy destroyers and merchant ships have sailed through the Strait, while Iran says those claims are entirely false. Meanwhile, South Korea is investigating a suspected external impact on its cargo vessel, HMM Namu, anchored off the UAE. Well, the friction follows the launch of Project Freedom, a US initiative set to escort hundreds of ships trapped in the Gulf. Iran warned it will forcibly stop any uncoordinated transit, sending Brent crude prices surging towards $115 per barrel. So all of this lies, damn lies, statistics. We don't really know what's going on. But in the middle of this is 2,000 ships that have been stuck for a couple of months now, waiting to exit the Strait of Hormuz. 2,000 ships with people on board. Even the American Navy, there are reports that they're running out of food. They're having to be rationed. So what is going on? And will these ships ever trust that Donald Trump can free the Strait of Hormuz? Well, here to discuss this, I'm absolutely thrilled to say, is Lauriane Larocco, Global Supply Chains, Trade and Maritime Logistics expert at Larocco Consulting. And you can follow Lauriane as an author on Substack, and I recommend that you do just that. Lauriane, thank you so much for joining me on this. The situation is so confusing because we don't trust Iran and we don't trust the White House. So what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, as we've said before, and Petrie, thank you for having me again, we have to look at the flow of trade. All right. Trade is a physical entity. So, you gave a good rundown as to what happened today, but also there was a tanker that was attacked at the Strait of Hormuz by the Iranians just hours after the United States announced the new Project Freedom. We also had a Greek-owned soy tanker that was bringing up, or I should say a carrier, bringing in soybeans. And so, you have these vessels trying to leave or go, and they're being attacked, not to mention that the UAE also reported that Iran struck one of their pipelines. And so this just shows you the flow of trade, right? The bluster. We've got two blockades literally colliding. You've got the blockade that the Iranians have on the Strait of Hormuz. You have the blockade that the United States has on the Strait of Hormuz. And it's like watching a football game, right now in real time. But unfortunately, the seafarers and the flow of trade are the victims here. And it's really unfortunate because no one is going to go through that strait in their own right mind. I was texting with somebody earlier today that works with a lot of tanker owners, and they said, no way in hell. That was exactly what they said. They were like, because of this threat, the threat has to be absolutely annulled in order to make sure that this passage is indeed safe, and that also the waterway is safe, because you do have all of those mines that are still in that waterway. So it's all bluster, and unfortunately we're just all victims of what we're seeing and these claims on, what we're hearing.
Let's start with there's so much to unpick here, but let's start with those seafarers that are stuck on these various vessels, 2,000 of them. I mean, they've been there for a couple of months now. What's happening in regards to their welfare? What's happening in regards to them getting food or water?
When it comes to supplies, a lot of times, because they're on for such a long time, there are supplies that are there for the duration. You might be dwindling down in supplies, but the mental anguish that these men and women, Petrie, are feeling is something that I can't even comprehend. I've been fortunate enough to go on a container vessel, and they're very, very large, but they're where they live, it's very small. I mean, picture a very small dorm room, right? Where you're there, but the internet connectivity is not there. And so a lot of times, they've got to use SIM cards in order to have the bandwidth to reach their loved ones. So imagine being on a vessel where you're stuck in water, You see missiles flying overhead. You can see these boats racing towards you in the event of like what we're seeing with the IRGC, and you can't reach out to a loved one. Or, heaven forbid, you're on a vessel that was attacked and your loved one gets the name of the vessel and they know where you are and they can't reach you. And so
It's
the
just
mental
shocking, isn't
anguish,
it? And
it's awful.
there's no thought to these people. I've not heard anybody really ask about the people that are stranded on these boats, because even to get supplies to them if they needed them, or medical care, who's going to fly a helicopter to a vessel at the moment with absolute security that the RGC wouldn't shoot them down?
Exactly. And that would have to be like a military operation. I mean, we know that the United States military is the best, right, in terms of everything that they do, but it would have to take coordination. Could they do it? Most definitely. But as you point out, the risk with the drones and all of that, clearly Iran has capability. And that is the big hesitation here because you get the mixed messaging that things were annihilated, things were wiped out. Yes, a lot of it was destroyed, but they still have the capability of wreaking havoc.
And we're hearing, of course, that China has supplied Iran with enough missiles to take out. I mean, they've only got to take out one ship. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Trump has got to escort thousands through, and they've only got to hit one to grind this to a halt, even if they trusted that he could do it right now.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, when you look at the amount of effort that will be needed by the U.S. Navy to physically move these vessels takes tremendous coordination. It can be done, but if we were going to do that today, we should have seen movement of those Navy vessels a week ago. So it's not like you can go willy-nilly and just pair up vessels with a naval warship. It takes critical planning. And when it comes to CENTCOM, these men and women, they love to plan, they thrive on planning, and they always have their A, B, C, D, E game, right? It's not as easy as a social post. And that's unfortunate in this world because we're seeing that on both sides. And so you could easily debunk if you didn't hit a warship, if you got video that shows that's not the case. So there's a lot to vet here.
The other suggestion has been, and there are around 1,500 to 2,000 military personnel in the region at the moment, was to put a military personnel on each ship. You'd have about 50 on each ship, I think, 100, something like that, and that they would then shoot out, blow up, kill, whatever, these small boats, these fast boats that Donald Trump is going on about and that we've seen images of. Is that acceptable to seafarers to suddenly become a military because putting soldiers on a ship makes that a military target, surely? I mean, the way I see it.
Like it or not, even with a soldier or somebody on the vessel, they've already been a target. When it comes to the world of maritime, the risk is always there. You have Somali pirates that to this day attack down near Africa. When it comes to the bad guys, so to speak, trying to prevent the flow of trade or to capture that trade is worth the risk. And so, there are maritime security firms that do offer security to vessels right now.
But not US military personnel, which the IRGC would accept as a military presence and behave accordingly.
Yes, yes, that the IRGC would do that, but they're also viewing, and they've also alerted out earlier that any vessel in a certain vicinity, you would be a target.
Right.
Once they started attacking those two vessels, just prior, they put out like this bulletin on the emergency channel to tell vessels to get out. So at this point, I think the IRGC is just saying, just give me a reason.
And the IRGC, who seem to be in complete control of Iran at the moment, not the mullahs, they are, one of the conditions that they've put forward is that they want to continue to run the Strait of Hormuz, which would be a first. I mean, anything else, the man-made channels but this is maritime law that this needs to be a free ride. So, but that looks like that is going to be a condition of them releasing these ships, and until that happens, those ships are not going anywhere.
Exactly. I mean, it is unheard of. It would be unprecedented if a free-flowing waterway would be subject to a toll. But we're going to get to a point where Donald Trump has had enough. We've seen it before.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when. And, you know, they're trying to do the diplomatic route. We've seen a lot of bluster on his point, but when he starts talking, he is a man of action, and he does follow through on what he says he's going to do, you know, when it comes to military force, when it comes to what he wants. If heaven forbid there was a toll on this, the inflationary impact that this would have on the global economy would be horrific.
Well,
I mean, we're seeing it now.
He's already suggested that he wants in on that action, though.
Yeah.
That he wants to toll the Strait of Hormuz.
Exactly. And the sad thing is that's great, but it's going to have an inflationary impact. I mean, I would love to put a toll on something, but the unintended consequences of this is like the World Bank, the IMF, like everybody, like everyone's just, you know, you're dumbfounded, you're gobsmacked at the audacity to think that you can toll this. You should not. It should not be told. It, like you pointed out, it's against the maritime law. But also what we're seeing right now is the continuation of the pawns of the men and women on these vessels that cannot get out. And you've got the fear and the stranglehold of trade that is literally impacting everyone's pocketbook around the world. And I heard you right off the top of the hour.
Yeah.
There's a reason why people are mad.
Yeah, they really are. There's unrest, like you said, all over the world about this. But, you know, we're talking, a lot of people are saying, I mean, again, Donald Trump saying, well, look, as soon as we get this open, your prices are going to come way down straight away. And that is just not going to happen, is it?
Absolutely not. Last time that I was on, we were talking about the compounding of time, right? This makes sense. Trade makes sense because it takes time to move vessels, right? So you have to, make sure that all the refineries are up and running in the Middle East.
Yeah.
They are not. They are not going to be at the same function as they were pre-war. The second, all the vessels that were currently in the Middle East are now in Asia or the United States. That could take in upwards of 50 days for those vessels to get back to the Strait of Hormuz. But then get this, as I say, the compounding of time. When you are talking to designers or retailers, they are planning and designing their cute little outfits that we're going to buy next spring in 2027 in July. There is already a shortage of the petrochemicals that make the products. There are over 70,000 different reiterations of products that are made from petrochemicals.
Wow.
So I was talking to them and I said, so what does that mean for, you know, my cute purse or my jacket? They said it's going to be a lot more money because we're going to have to pay more money for these building blocks to build these products, but there will also be less. And so it's that 1-2 punch. And then on top of it, as we're looking towards the holidays, which I can't believe because we're not even near summer yet, you're going to see more promotional items because they know people don't have the money.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see a lot of promotion this fall, all because of what is happening now.
And one thing that you said earlier, which sent shivers down my spine, was the hair dye.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, okay, ladies out there, this is not good. So if you think about it...
it even has that impact all the way down the line.
Yes, it does, because you look at all the building blocks, like there are resins and different quality of resins that come out of Saudi Arabia. And one of the companies in Saudi Arabia, they provide 70% of these critical uh, resins that are found in hair dye, plastic, like all things plastic. And the chemicals are already going up. My hairstylist here in the United States told me last week, she was like, "You are right." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You're right." And I'm like, "About what?" She's like, "My prices are up 50%."
Wow.
And I said, "Is it just your brand?" She's like, "No, it's across the board." And so that shows you that, and so in effect, that is the impact of the tariffs. That does not include yet the impact of the chemicals.
Wow. So
You
this
remember
there's
the
a
delay?
yeah. So the delay and the lag will just push all those. Good job we're both naturally blonde. Otherwise,
Oh, of course,
that
of
would be a
course.
real problem. But the ships. Let's go back to the ships. Is that the ships at the moment? They've got to trust that
Yeah,
Trump can do this, and you're saying there is no trust. They
none.
until Iran say right, the strait is open. Can you see ships moving?
You know, you see those that want to take the chance, like the Greek ship owner that, brought his bulk vessel through. You saw what happened. Um, the tanker owner operators, you do not want to be that Roman candle
Mm,
that explodes because you're carrying fuel. You don't need a rocket to go hit you. I mean, I mean, it's dangerous to begin with, but let alone you're carrying fuel. The problem is it's leadership by social media. BIMCO, which represents a lot of the ship owners and all that throughout the world, the head of BIMCO said, "We have not heard from the Trump administration on what exactly they are going to
wow.
do when it comes to this guidance. Like, what is that? Like, are you going to just throw like a GPS signal through the water? Is it a physical vessel?" But remember, if you have a Navy ship next to you, in Iran's eyes, that's clear violation.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about just having a soldier on a vessel. If you have a U.S. Navy ship going out there with you, you know that you're going to face some sort of aggression
And
from
there are
Iran.
lives. It's not just the shipping, like we talked about earlier. There's people that are on those ships through no fault of their own.
Yeah, they're
Um,
just doing their job.
it is. I mean, I just can you see a way out of this? Just
No, we're in it so deep that it will have to end very badly for one side.
yeah.
It has to, because you're at the point of no return. Iran was able to control the strait for a very, very long time. They never, ever, ever should have had control over this strait, ever. And, you've got politicians pointing fingers, bickering. We've seen it all. Everybody's throwing dirt in the little sandbox, but somebody has to be an adult, and they have to realize that everybody is involved in this.
Yeah.
Everybody's pocketbook is involved in this. And if people really, really care about the flow of trade and for things to get back to normal, maybe in a year,
Wow.
you've got to have governments getting together, banding together, put aside the differences. You could always put a pin in it and go back to tomorrow, but you need strength in numbers, and you need to put a stop to this. And it's going to have to come down to something very strong.
Wow. Laurie, it's always an absolute delight to talk to you. And maybe one day we can have a nice chat about something positive. That would be good. But in the meantime, it's lovely to see you. Laurie-Anne Larocco there, Global Supply Chains, Trade and Maritime Logistics expert at Larocco Consulting. And like I said, follow Laurie-Anne as an author on Substack. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening to you, and my apologies to Andrea in Cornwall. Sorry. I ruined her early night, she said. Well, there goes my planned early night. How can I miss your show with a lineup like this? I've just put the kettle on. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry, Andrea. That's truthfully how I feel. I'm glad to have your company. Right, so coming up at midnight, of course, it is the Talkback Hour. And what I want to talk to you about really is this poll that was taken, that 79% of us believe that the Brits will be taken to the streets this summer, that there will be widespread lawlessness as the cost of living crisis bites, that we are all so close to the edge that we are ready to take to the streets, not in protest, but in rioting. So I want to know, how close are you to the edge, and what would push you over it? And do you agree that this is a tinderbox? I mean, I often hear people say, oh, it's, everybody's a little bit fractious, and I think there's a lot of very, very unhappy people in this country at the moment. But I'd like to know if you think the UK is close to exploding, and if you're close to the edge, what would push you over? What do you think might be the moment that you go, right, I've had enough now, that's it, I'm done? Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And just a reminder that coming up at the top of the hour, we have Amy Fisher. She'll be here to go through the papers. But right now, we're going to talk about the battle of the behemoths of technology. The legal battle between Elon Musk and OpenAI has entered its second week over in Oakland in California. Musk, who concluded 3 days of testimony last Thursday, alleges a bait-and-switch betrayal, claiming that Sam Altman and Greg Brockman abandoned OpenAI's founding non-profit mission to build a commercial giant. So basically the agreement was that they were not going to go commercial. Musk left on that basis. Well, Andy hated Sam Altman. And now they've gone commercial, and Musk is upset about it. The $150 billion lawsuit centres on allegations of a breach of charitable trust and unjust enrichment, with a $1 trillion IPO at stake. The case is a philosophical referendum. Is AI a public utility or is it a private commodity? The verdict will define whether Silicon Valley's altruistic foundations can survive the gravity of unprecedented corporate profit. My money's on corporate profit. That's what's going to win. But here to discuss this with me further is the fabulous Burton Kelso, my brother from another mother, chief tech expert at Integral in Kansas City, USA. Burton Kelso, may the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you too.
Okay, I know you're a huge fan of Star Wars, so I just had to introduce you in that way.
I appreciate that.
Listen, the Battle of the Behemoths here, Godzilla versus King Kong is what some people have described it as. It's all a bit odd to me, this, Burton. What really is behind this?
Well, I think, like you stated, it's corporate greed. And I think there's just male egos going back and forth because obviously OpenAI and ChatGPT has evolved further than what anyone had anticipated. So it's Elon having his feelings hurt, but at the same time, it's Sam Altman saying, well, we can stay as a nonprofit, but at the same time, with the way AI has exploded, there's really no way that as a nonprofit that we can continue to provide AI in a sense that the world wants it and not have the funding that is going to that needs to happen in order to us to keep evolving and creating with AI.
So Sam Altman's argument is that he's got to make corporate profit in order to keep it free for everybody to use.
Right.
So that doesn't sound like too bad an argument. But Musk, his argument in that, well, this was supposed to be for, and he's against this, them making profit, when he's got his own AI company, XAI, which is all about corporate profit. So he's not talking in altruistic terms, right?
Exactly. And that's the biggest problem with this lawsuit is just the simple fact that you've got Elon Musk, who has his own private XAI company. And I think it boils down to, I had a protege, he's doing better than I am, I've got the money, I'm going to sue this guy, and I'm going to prevent this large IPO, which is probably the largest in global history, $1 trillion opening initial public offering. And I think really in this state of what we're dealing with, I hate that this is even in the news because I think we have to understand that AI has to evolve. It's here. It's a part of our life. And if OpenAI needs to evolve from a nonprofit to a private company or a publicly traded company, it needs to happen. I mean, I hate to say, and I hate those words that are about to come out of my mouth. Essentially, Elon is right that you really can't start off as a nonprofit and go and say, well, now we want to be a for-profit company. But I think AI has definitely become a larger role across the globe. So what is logically the next step that OpenAI needs to take? And that is to transform from a nonprofit to a company that is for profit for the greater good. And I think that's what OpenAI's argument is.
And I mean, does Musk therefore think he's entitled, because he left OpenAI, he and Sam Altman, I believe, had a big fallout, but he left there because he was saying, look, I'm just funding this startup company and I'm fed up with it. But is he now saying that he wants a slice of the IPO because he should have been paid out when he left?
No, Elon actually wants them to lose out and saying that if it shouldn't be, well, actually with the lawsuit money, he wants to give it to some nonprofit. And the 150, is it 150 billion that he's suing for? He wants that to actually go to a nonprofit. But I still think it's the fact that he may be wounded ego-wise, that the fact that OpenAI has transformed itself into this global monstrosity, as opposed to what has happened with X and everything X related, that he's not the top dog. And I think ultimately that is why the argument's there. But again, I do see both sides. But I think ultimately, if we're going, I think what needs to happen in this instance is that you have to allow OpenAI to transform from a nonprofit to a global powerhouse, because ChatGPT, Sora, and all of its other forms have just evolved,
Yeah.
where so many businesses
Unlike
depend on it.
Grot. Is it Grot? His or
It's
Grok?
grok.
I think it's
Like
Grot.
grok, like a, yeah,
Yeah.
like a frog. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So that is not doing as well. In fact, there's a lot of problems with that. Always pushing that Elon Musk is the greatest man that ever lived to the top of its search engines. But this is complicated as well, isn't it? By Microsoft suggesting to Elon Musk that they buy it. That they buy OpenAI, and that would be a conflict, surely, to the lawsuit.
It would be a conflict to the lawsuit, but a lot of people don't realize that Microsoft is actually the benefactor that came in after Elon and said, "Hey, we want to see you succeed." And so tools like Copilot exist because they have used the technology from OpenAI's ChatGPT. So, I mean, it seems like a logical suggestion from Microsoft. But then again, it goes to the ego of Elon of, now I've got this other powerhouse that I have to compete with. So I would rather them be turned to ashes and have my AI be on a more equal scale as far as how competitive we can be in the marketplace. Because
Wow.
when you think of AI, you think of OpenAI's ChatGPT,
Yeah.
Copilot, and Grot, as you called it, are they're further from the global conscious as far as AI is concerned.
So the battle of the egos, then, but where does that leave us? Because talking about Silicon Valley, there's been an awful lot said about these AI companies being massively overvalued, and an IPO of $1 trillion would seem to back that up, that they're banking on an enormous value going forward on a technology that sometimes is more bluff and bluster than it is actual technology. So, at some point, there could be a massive collapse in this entire market.
It's a good possibility with that as far as AI is concerned, but I think there are so many different chatbots that there's probably a large language model like ChatGPT that may be waiting in the wings to rise from the ashes of this battle and to take place. I mean, I really think that we are in a position with AI that it's not going to go away. We've tasted the forbidden fruit. So these two companies may go away, but the sole purpose of AI or OpenAI's mission was to see the downfall of Google. That was the
Mm.
whole purpose of ChatGPT. So who may rise from the ranks? It may be Uncle Google that becomes the preferred chatbot after all of this bluff and buster or bluster goes on. So I mean, I don't think AI is going anywhere. It's just who is going to reign Silicon Valley as the AI king once this is all said and done.
I mean, the main thing I think in terms of safety and security for the public is that it doesn't all end up with the same tech bros, right? That they don't have this stranglehold on AI and forcing us all down a tunnel that we don't want to go. That it has to be open. That was the whole point, is that it's not held by a few hands that can corrupt the rest of the world.
Exactly. And I think what has evolved since 2022, since ChatGPT hit the screen, is that you've seen a lot of smaller companies fight for their market share of AI. And so much to the point that you can't just rely on ChatGPT as your only AI chatbot, that there are a variety of tools that are out there. So I think that while OpenAI's ChatGPT kind of has the collective consciousness of the world, there are so many different chatbots out there in different forms of AI that they won't dominate as much as they want to. They won't be the AI tool for all use. Like right now, Anthropic's Claude is starting to climb to the top as the preferred large language model or AI choice, because you're starting to see a shift from the prompting AI tools to more agentic AI, meaning that people are looking for AI that's going to help with automation. And ChatGPT hasn't quite reached that level yet. They're still back in 2022, 2023 as far as prompts. But tools like Claude and other tools like it are starting to lead the forefront in 2026.
I mean, does Sam Altman still, even though he wants to go ahead with this IPO, raising $1 trillion in order to continue with AI, does he fundamentally still believe that it should be in the hands of all people, or does this mount a threat to them becoming the most powerful AI company and holding all that intellectual property to themselves?
Well, I think there's a lot of programs that are tied into utilizing ChatGPT and that technology. I mean, there's been several large language models that have been built using ChatGPT. So I don't think the overall goal is to necessarily be the most well-known. I think overall their goal is, like Google's, to be able to monitor and collect data and sell that on like Uncle Google does, but at the same time to be the engine behind a lot of the large language models that you see on the market. So not necessarily the Titan that we're the only tool, but we want to be known in the space, but we recognize that there are other companies that want to have their own chatbots, but we want to be the vision and the engine behind that as well.
Is there such a thing in the States as a monopolies commission, like we would have here? Like if companies get too big or too powerful, then we look at them and say, no, we need to break you down because you cannot have that much control. You mustn't have that much of the marketplace. Does that exist in the US?
Yes, it sure does. I mean, one of the most recent examples that I can always think of is AT&T. Back in I would say in the early 80s up until 2000, AT&T was broken down into multiple companies. And of course, the antitrust companies are always after Microsoft and other software entities out there. So yes, there's definitely a system like that in the US, and they're always actively looking at purchases and mergers and acquisitions to ensure that there are no monopolies here in the States.
Unless, of course, you buy into Trump crypto.
Oh, my goodness.
Then there's a whole different world opens up. Burton Kelso.
Oh, it sure does.
It's so wonderful to see you looking so well. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Let's not leave it so long next time. Burton Kelso there, Chief Tech Expert at Integral in Kansas City, USA. Stay where you are. We're talking David Attenborough next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And just a reminder that Amy Fisher joins us at midnight. No, at the top of the hour. Sorry. I'm getting overexcited because I'm going to talk about a man now that I totally am in love with, and I have been since I was a child. I just think that he is an extraordinary human being, and this week marks his life on this planet at 100 years. That's on Friday. For over 7 decades, the veteran broadcaster has served as the primary witness to the wonders and the fragility of our natural world. From his pioneering early days at the BBC to his recent urgent calls for environmental action, David Attenborough has transitioned from a curious naturalist to a global moral compass. The legendary career redefined documentary making. I mean, that voice to bridge the gap between complex science and the public. And he's turned so many kids like me into a fascination with the natural world. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Tony Lee Morrell, who is a documentary filmmaker and the author of the documentary filmmaker and author of the upcoming biography Attenborough, Our Planet, His Voice. What a brilliant title. Good to meet you, Tony. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I learned something today about the man that I've been in love with my whole life, and that is that he was an executive at the BBC.
Oh, absolutely, yes, in the 1960s, after a career as a broadcaster, and as you probably know, he started as a trainee at the BBC in the early 50s, and he worked himself up through broadcasting as a presenter, most famously on Zoo Quest. And then in the mid-60s, he became a channel controller of BBC Two, quite extraordinary, and was very instrumental in commissioning some landmark productions such as
Monty Python.
Kenneth Clark's Civilization, Jacob Bronowski's The Ascent of Man, yeah.
I mean, the man who brought us Monty Python's Flying Circus is extraordinary. But he was always into nature. He was always fascinated. He grew up in Leicestershire, and his father was an academic at the local university. So he was brought up around very smart people, but he was fascinated on getting on his bike and just going out into the countryside. What was he doing there?
Yes, that was one of my favourite parts of researching his biography, his childhood in Leicester. As you said, his father, Frederick, was a principal at the Leicester College there. And he was the middle of 3 brothers, most famously Richard Attenborough was his older brother. And he would spend a lot of time in the limestone quarries because Leicester was built on this great foundation of Jurassic bed. And that's where he really fell in love with fossils and would go collecting. But I also found out a wonderful story because at the Leicester Zoology Department, there was a pond outside and he would collect the newts and sell them to the staff. So very entrepreneurial, even at that young age. I think it was like 10 years old, but that's where his fascination started, in the quarries, in the back gardens and the college campuses.
And he never, ever lost his love for that. It must have been particularly frustrating for this man that we've grown to know to be a pencil pusher, to be, even if at the BBC, to be, in that sort of role rather than, digging around for fossils and looking at interesting creatures. It must have been frustrating.
It was, and I have a whole chapter on his broadcasting career at the BBC where it's called the View from the 6th Floor, when he's, right up at the top of the hierarchy, and he was offered the Director General job, which he didn't really want to do. That, as you said, more kind of paper shuffling and the politics, and he was really yearning to go back into the field, having done all those years on Zoo Quest, and he came back with series like Eastwoods with Attenborough, and that obviously led on to his huge and most famous landmark, Life on Earth.
How did that happen for him? life on Earth? I mean, was he just that so natural when he talked about the natural world that they couldn't wait to sign him up? Or did he have to go and beg and say, look, I've got this great idea?
I certainly don't think he had to beg, because he was very much, even though he was based in London as controller of BBC Two at the time, and then he was very much talking to the BBC Natural History Unit in Bristol, which is, very famous institution and part of the BBC. So he knew what they were doing. And because of series, he was working with producers such as Richard Brock, a very famous producer. He worked with Eastwood with Attenborough, and then on The Living Planet. So he seemed like an ideal figure because of his background in broadcasting, his just passion for natural history, and obviously his just awareness of the huge mechanics that goes into making these landmark series such as Civilization or The Ascent of Man. So I think he was a natural choice for it.
And he just had this mesmerizing way of talking, of speaking, that even if you were the greatest biologist in the world sitting next to a child, both would understand. You didn't talk down to the very brilliant, and he didn't exclude the very ignorant. I mean, that's a real skill to be able to do that.
It is, and the title, Our Planet, His Voice. I actually investigated that. I really wanted to know where did he get his diction from, his tones. And actually, Richard Attenborough is a clue there, because Richard would stage plays in Leicester, and he would recruit David to become part of his kind of repertory theatre, even though David had no interest later on in becoming an actor or in plays. But as a young man or as a teenager, he trained theatrically with Richard, and obviously learnt his kind of diction and at the Leicester Zoology, at the museum, and his enthusiasm for animals. So that's a really good link with his brother, I think.
Yeah, it is. But he also had a way of simplifying quite complex issues and making you go along with him. Was he scripted? Did he have this incredible encyclopedic knowledge of what he was talking about, or did he need to just learn that as he went along?
Well, he has a great memory and a fondness of books. So he then went to Clare College at Cambridge and read The Naturalists, as he had done as a child, Alfred Russel Wallace, and Charles Darwin, obviously. So he was very much trained at Cambridge as well. So that encyclopedic knowledge and that enthusiasm and curiosity, which he also learned at Leicester Museum, he spent a lot of his childhood there as well.
Again, with him travelling all around the world, I mean, this was a new form of documentary making, right, where the presenter could be seen, where he was engaging with the animals. One of the most famous ones was when he was cuddled by a gorilla, which I understand only recently found out that they had to smuggle that out of the footage of that out of the country. They nearly had it taken off them. But there's so much about his personality that came through with his documentary making, and that was really seminal. That was a real change in the way these very dry documentaries would often be delivered.
Yes, certainly. I mean, he was very immersive, even in ZooQuest in the early 50s. The idea was to take that studio experience into the field, because previous to that, in series such as Animal Patterns, very much like Animal Magic later on, the zoologist Jack Lester, who was from London Zoo, would bring animals into the studio, and they were trying to think of ways to bring the public out into the wild, out into the jungles or to the savannah. And he certainly heralded that as a broadcaster.
We have a photograph of you, I think we want to show, of you as a young man working with Sir David, and a dedication that you've done. So that's you there, is it?
It is, yes. I was extremely fortunate. I did my degree in zoology, in the early 90s, and my first job in television was researching for David Attenborough
Wow.
on the private life of plants.
That's
So
amazing.
it doesn't get much better than that.
Oh, and
And
the
that's
dedication there.
a signed copy of the book, because I sent him to Japan. He loved Japan, loves Japanese antiquities. And we found a story of a 2,000-year-old seed of Magnolia cobus, which is a rare orchid, which then germinated.
Oh, I mean,
so,
it's such a wonderful thing. And look, your book's coming out, the biography of Attenborough, Our Planet, His Voice. Thank you, Tony Lee Morrill, for joining me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you on this bank holiday. And coming up in an hour, of course, it is your chance to talk back. And what I want to talk to you about is this poll that's come out. And it says that Brits, 79% of us, think there will be widespread riots this summer. So not protests, riots will be taking to the streets. Those same people think there will be widespread lawlessness as the cost of the living crisis bites. And also that 83% are braced for more shoplifting because of soaring bills, while 73% of people are also worried that they'll see a rise in homelessness and people going hungry. So my question to you is, do you predict a riot? Do you think that Britain is on the edge? And are you on the edge? What has put you on the edge, and what would push you over the edge? Now, we're not going to talk about being lawless on the streets of Britain. This is a psychological conversation only. We don't, obviously, this rioting is illegal and he will be arrested for it, so it can't be promoted. But I'm more interested in the theory of it. What is it that's making you so angry? What is it that you think? And do you believe that there will be people taking to the streets? That we will see the usual tutting and can't be bothered attitude of Brits be turned into something altogether different? Is it the cost of living crisis? Is it the frustration with the politicians at the moment? Is it the frustration with the world at the moment? Is it the never-ending bills that we seem to have to pay all the time? What is it, do you think, that is putting us on edge? And what's putting you on the edge? What would push you over it? And do you think, I mean, often people say to me, I get messages all the time, go, oh, we're minutes away from rioting on the streets. Really? Tell me why you think that that's going to happen. 79% of these people that were polled all said that they believe that Britain is on the edge, that it will turn to street violence. Do you agree with that? Or do you think this is being overblown? Do you think that it really won't happen? Do you think that there'll be one or two protests in the usual half-hearted way that we do them, and then we'll all go back to tea and dunking biscuits? Or is there something very different going on? I live in a London bubble, right? I need you to tell me what's going on in the rest of the country, because I don't live in the rest of the country. Only you know what's going on in your locale. Only you know how people are feeling in your circle of friends. Only you can tell me what's going on in the rest of the country. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do, as ever, call you back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. I've already got messages coming through from people who are frustrated. I believe there is a lot of frustration out there, but is it enough to tip you over the edge? Well, joining me to discuss this and the papers for tomorrow is the fabulous Amy Fisher. Good
Hello.
to see you.
Very nice to see you.
Very nice to see you. So listen, Amy, former Director of Comms for the Tories, I should say that in case you've not met her before. Do you recognise that? I mean, it's a fairly stark warning.
I mean, I'm quite surprised by the 79%. I'm not surprised at the general sort of sentiment and anger. I mean, things are so expensive. There was even the report out just at the beginning of this week, you know, nice, happy bank holiday news. Usually the media tries to give us, you know, pictures of lambs skipping among the fields of bluebells or something. But no, one of the main headlines, you know, on Bank Holiday Monday was this think tank that has done research saying that food, basic food things, so sort of basic cuts of meat, tea, coffee, literally staples that you're buying in your weekly shop, are going to be 50% more expensive this November than they were in November 2021, which is sort of the point that most people recognise as being, you know, the start of the cost of living crisis. I mean, that's completely insane. 50%
in 5 years.
In 5 years, we're not talking about small margins here. And as I say, that's on very basic stuff, and people do get frustrated. I mean, the usual sort of yes, I worked in politics for many years, you know, Director of Comms for the Conservative Party, and sort of one of those questions that you sort of always brief your, you know, sort of PM or ministers with to make sure that they knew how to be in touch with the people is how much is the pint of a cost of milk. Was one of those things. A loaf of bread, pints of milk. They always used to sort of give them. But genuinely, I was saying this to a friend the other day, is, you know, do you know how much a banana is? It's 28p for a banana.
Yeah, I've noticed my milk has gone up.
And okay, I was buying some of the fancy ones. I was buying a pink lady apple, 75p.
Wow.
But I'm talking about for one apple. So when we are talking in those kind of margins where, you know, just going to say it, somebody like me, I broadly describe myself as, you know, sort of middle class, you know, working full time and all of that kind of thing. When I'm kind of, you know, going to buy my pink lady apple as a sort of, you know, stack on the way home, it's sort of 75p.
Yeah.
You know, we are talking of a level where you are just taking a breath in when you're looking at the cost of really average things. I'm not sure we're at the stage yet of whether this will produce riots, because I'm actually not quite sure who one will be rioting against, in the sense that back in another incarnation of a role I had in government, I worked for DEFRA, Department for Farming and Rural Affairs. Trust me, it is not the farmers who are making money out of this. Can we just dispel any notion?
Less and less.
I mean, the dairy farming community in this country is absolutely on its knee. I mean, it has been even before we've had the downstream effect of sort of fertiliser costs, which have obviously come out of the latest war in the Middle East and other associated disruptions. I actually don't think it's particularly, well, no, the figures show it's actually not particularly the supermarkets. Okay, we do have the big five. There are questions about whether they are calibrating correctly the proportion of their dividends, but it's not that their dividends have gone up by 50%. So there isn't a direct correlation between how much people are
who's making the money?
Well, I don't think anybody's particularly making money. I think a lot of it is the downstream effect of everything we've had over the last 4 years, obviously four and a half years since the start of the Ukraine war, and downstream. As I say, probably the supermarkets are making a little bit more, but it's definitely not the farmers, it's not the producers that are doing well out of this. So it's hard to see who, I mean, because I get really mad, so I've just demonstrated about the cost of my pink lady apple, but I'm not sure who would be protesting to, because it's not within the wherewithal of government to imply some kind of basic food cost control. I mean, unless they're going to do something really mad and drastic, like return back to 1950 style rationing, which I don't even think they're going to go towards. I mean, it's quite hard to see where protesting would rise. I think more immediately what's going to really bite for people when they're doing their weekly shops is not just the cost of their basket or trolley as they're going to the checkout, it is the blatant shoplifting. I mean, I just can't get over. So where I live in East Dulwich, my sort of local supermarket, like a sort of Sainsbury's, it's a bit bigger than a mini Metro, but it's not kind of full-size big aisle one. I sort of, because it's close to where I live, and on my sort of way home, about 5 minutes away, I'm pretty much in there like every other day, just kind of buying stuff as I need it. I reckon I see 3 shoplifts a week at least, actually. And by shoplifts, I mean, and they have a security guard now there the whole time, by the way, from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m, like the hours when it's fully open. You never used to see that a couple of years ago, but then maybe a year ago, there started to be a security guard there, maybe around like tea time through to closing.
For the school kids.
The kind of sort of rush hour, sort of when people are coming in after work and whatnot. And it used to be there sort of particularly, the items that were tagged were particularly sort of alcohol, basically. Now they've put in all these kind of slidey shelf things over like the tea and the coffee. And as I say, like basic essentials, not 30, 40 pound bottles of spirits, around the basic essentials to make it more difficult for people just to be able to, whip something into a bag. But yeah, literally, a couple of weekends ago, about 10 o'clock, popped in to get my 28 pence banana and the Sunday newspapers. And this guy sort of slightly pushed past, but just carrying a stack of steaks. And the security guard was there, and there was another chap sort of just behind me also picking, some fruit off the shelf or whatever. This guy just went out with a stack of steaks and sort of started trotting, up the road. Not at a fast pace. I mean, he wasn't badly dressed or anything. And like, sort of me and the chap kind of looked at each other, and then we both sort of looked at the security guard, and the security guard just kind of shrugged, and then the chap there went, I guess we're just not paying for food these days. And then we all went around our business of sort of, right.
And it was just that's a victimless crime, but it isn't, because we are paying.
Not, because then it will be then paid for, sort of through the insurance that the supermarket will have. But ultimately, it's not a victimless crime. But it also, whilst it was victimless in the sense that the guy who was stealing, as I say, literally a stack of steaks just straight off the shelf, whilst he wasn't violent, didn't shout anything, kind of didn't disturb anybody. I mean, not even the security guard, although these days they're not meant to give chase or anything. So sort of once the guy had left and was trotting up the street, that's it, it's gone. But it did just create this very surreal air of, well, as I say, as a chap remarked to me, I guess we're just not paying for food these days. We both sort of did that polite but weirdly awkward British.
Yeah.
I'm just not quite sure what's happened here. Like somebody's just stolen, I don't know, 100 quid's worth of steaks.
Yeah,
and that's
at
just
least.
And that's just what happens on a Sunday morning in the local Sainsbury's. And yes, I was sort of a bit taken aback.
So you
but
extrapolate that across, you know, I mean, I know that the M&S in Hammersmith, you used to be able to get into it through those back doors, and now they've closed those back doors, and that was pretty much because people were just sort of loading up their cars.
I'm going to make East Dulwich, which is sort of where I live, sound like some kind of lawless Wild West, and it really isn't. But you know, if I'm just sort of wandering around Lordship Lane of a morning, it's not uncommon to see the kind of security people that M&S have on main Lordship Lane, the main kind of, you know, sort of high street, if you like, you know, grappling with somebody who's got, you know, sort of booze or, again, the meat under their jacket. I mean, it's just not uncommon in a way that a couple of years ago I would have been really taken back by it, but now you're a bit like, oh.
Shoplifting's basically been decriminalised unless you steal more than £250. Yeah, which Keir Starmer says he's going to take that off the, I don't know, and say that any shoplifting is criminal. But basically people are going in, like they do in America, and just adding up how much they're, but just as long as they don't go over that magic number, then they're okay to just steal it.
It's the absolute
but it's the unfairness, isn't it, for us?
It's impunity, and then the other side of that coin is the unfairness of it. That's exactly the point. It's that when you know, people are just doing it, it does have the downstream cost literally on everybody else, and it just adds this sense of, sorry, what's going on here? So yes, the shoplifting part I fear, as well as just the sheer cost of your basket when you get to the till. I fear that's just going to become more and more prevalent, you know, like the experience I had the other Sunday of, oh right, some people just aren't paying for food from this shop any.
But it is the frustration, but I wonder if frustration is enough to tip people over into anger.
Well, I think people, Petrie, are already very angry. It's just, you know, if the outlet to that does become some kind of protest, and you know, protests do tend to happen in the summer because it's hotter and people tend not to like to be in the cold and wet when they're getting very angry about something. But this is sort of my, and I hope it doesn't sound terribly naive, but who is the anger being directed at? I mean, yes, the government in a generalised sense, because this government does seem pretty rubbish about doing much about anything.
Well, and also this government has taken us to the highest tax levels. We're all feeling that now.
There are other related taxes.
We're all feeling that now.
Yeah.
Extra tax, extra national insurance, all of those things. People, that is Rachel Reeves' fault.
Oh, please don't try and put me in the very unusual position of defending the government, because that was not a route I was going down.
No.
I just, in the very specific question of cost of living, I'm not quite sure what the levers for government to immediately do about the cost of the weekly shopping basket would be. That is not the same as saying that I do believe they are very complicit in making everybody's lives much more expensive by other fiscal decisions they've taken.
Yeah, they're making our lives miserable with those decisions. Anyway, so that's the bone-in coming up at midnight. Talk back. Do just that, please. Let me know. Are you on the edge? What would tip you over the edge? Could you go from frustrated to angry? Are you angry already? Let me know. Do you predict a riot? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. Talking of making our lives miserable, let's have a look at the front page of the Times. Mansion tax will cost the Treasury nearly £400 million.
I mean, what is the absolute perverse incentive? I mean, what I find so staggering about Labour is they just don't seem to have learned that every time they try and sort of essentially tinker around the edges of anything to do with property taxes, it comes around and bites them. I mean, if they want some serious overhaul of property tax in this country, which, by the way, I do not think they should do, because I think it is an out and out. It will not meet the sort of test of those with the broadest shoulders will bear the burden, because actually there are an awful lot of people who've saved and bought a family house and then they've passed it down to their children or whatever, and that's actually about being able to enjoy and pass on the kind of fruits of your labour, for want of a better way of putting it. So I don't actually believe in the kind of large premise of rejigging property taxes anyway, but the way they often try and slice off a bit here, slice off a bit there, it just hasn't been thought through, because you know the sums around the income that they were going to get from mansion tax, if we remember back to the election 2 years ago, mansion tax was going to be the one that then paid for everything that they were going to plug in social care, and actually social care was the big one that they always said they would pay for from the mansion tax. I mean, it's not going to, so not only is it not going to come close to that, it's actually going to cost the Treasury. So now whoever is running Rachel Reeves' deficit book, because again, if we remember, a general election, you yourself, the party, whichever party it is, Labour, Conservatives, you're tended to be expected to cost your own manifesto, and then very clever people like the IFF, Institute for Fiscal Studies, and other independent people will also come along and have a look at it. But so by any stretch, who is ever looking at what the kind of election red book equivalent was for Labour back then, will now have a very big hole somewhere. Yeah. And that's just the reality of it. And that's not a particularly political point to make. That's just saying, well the sums don't add up.
Often raising income tax, whichever party does it, reduces income tax intake, because people will find ever cleverer ways of avoiding it. So when they say, oh well, let's raise income tax on this group of people, it actually reduces income tax take. So often there are the unintended consequences. We're going to leave that Labour MP story alone, because the papers have more latitude than we do during Purdah, and the election is only a few days away. But we can talk about this. Iran shatters Gulf ceasefire after US offers Strait support. US offers to open what was already open before it closed it. But still, Iran claimed to have fired, we've seen this, they claimed to have fired a warship. CENTCOM, the Americans, said they didn't. And then Trump said that they'd shot down 7 small boats, and Iran said that they didn't. So nobody knows what's going on, and all the while we're paying more for everything.
I think just your opening line about something being opened again that there's closed is to go back to the real sort of Alice in Wonderland dystopian kaleidoscope through which we're now weeks on ongoingly looking at sort of the war and the closure, opening, ceasefire, not ceasefire of the Hormuz Strait. Because I mean, I was listening to sort of commentary by a very senior, retired but senior sort of 3-star American general, like one of their real sort of big top dogs from the 90s, and he was sort of saying, well, yes, the closure of the Strait was always something that we'd war gamed in the 90s and through to the early 2000s, because it had been done before, right?
Yeah.
And so I was sort of nodding along with this, thinking, well, okay, that's no surprise there. Been done before, so they're still sort of wargaming it as you would expect in the 90s and 2000s. And then he made this leap that I sort of went back and listened to the bit in the podcast again, because I sort of did that genuine head twitch on the sort of on my run, because he then said, so this was the strength of Trump's position, that once the arrangement had then been closed, that Trump was in such a bargaining position to get them to open it again after he said he would stop hostilities.
What?
No, but this is what I mean about, I went, but that's not a thing. They closed it because this sort of war was launched without any sort of real justification geopolitically widely, or I think from the Americans' end, knowing a strategic endpoint. And then the not knowing of that in itself became the strength that Trump paused the war with all those faults in it, that meant that there could be a negotiation.
That's not a thing.
No, it's not. And I'm glad that you said that, because I
nonsense.
really, as I said, I had to go back and listen to what he said, that was that's a real arguing that the grass is blue and the sky is green.
Yeah, and also the idea that Trump is doing us all a favour when it's him and Israel that got the Strait of
the own making.
Yeah.
No, but this was
and
so
they were told
violently,
that it would be closed.
and it would happen.
Yeah.
But this is what I mean, the leap between the general go, this is what we were all gaming, and then we go, so it's a position of strength that it got closed, and now Trump is going to negotiate it to have it reopened. It was a real, like, sorry, what?
Sorry, what? Yeah, that's literally reinventing it, isn't it? Completely. But yeah, Project Freedom. But nobody knows how it's going to work, and the ships haven't been told how it's going to work, and nobody has a clue as to what's going to happen.
Well, and that as is detailed here at the bottom. Tehran's semi-official Fars news agency have claimed that Iranian forces hit 2 American vessels sort of already. This has obviously been denied by US Central Command, so, you know, now we didn't know all of the things that you've outlined, and also we don't know if it did start, whether the 2 American ships ever started to kind of
exactly that
move out, or whether they have been
pushed back.
hit.
And that's the whole point, is that they're expecting these other ships, these commercial ships, to trust that they'll get through. And by the way, any minesweepers are going to be weeks away from getting there, and even if they're allowed to clear the mines by the IRGC, it's an extraordinary mess. And Trump seems keen to sort of simplify this, as he's doing us a favour, and that it's easily done.
Yeah,
and neither of those is true.
Things are true. And exactly to that point, so again, from the front page of the Times, about halfway down the Times report, Trump described Project Freedom as, quote, humanitarian gesture on behalf of the United States, Middle Eastern country, to enable one-way transit to relieve crews stranded for weeks. Again, that is a very sideways interpretation of what I think most of the world understands to be rather closer to the truth about what's happened here.
Yeah, but it's all. But every day the reason for being there changes. From Trump, we haven't got a clue what's really going on. I just want to draw your attention to Amanda Knox. At the top there, why I'm doing a comedy show. Now, this is inside the Times 2 actually, so we don't know why she's doing a comedy show. But can't imagine there'll be many people wanting to go and watch Amanda Knox do a comedy show.
So what is interesting for me is just the pure set out of this. So with that top banner, Amanda Knox, why I'm doing a comedy show, because it doesn't say who Amanda Knox is, and that's the whole point. The reason why Amanda Knox is infamous, is the Meredith Kercher murder in Italy.
And whether she was implicated 20 years ago. It must be, yeah.
And whether there were both two. Meredith Kercher was British student over there for language. Amanda Knox was American. They were sharing a house together. Meredith Kercher was sort of horrifically murdered, and then Amanda Knox and her then boyfriend and then another local bar owner were accused and sort of convicted of it, and then there was a retrial, and it was all very much
acquitted.
She was acquitted, and it was then huge questions about how the Italian legal system had worked. In all of this, and yes, you're absolutely right, it is important to say Amanda Knox was eventually acquitted, but in all of this, I'm not sure if I was an individual and I was known out in the world and my face was recognisable in newspapers for being somebody...
For being
involved,
at the time, a convicted murderer.
Being at the time, being involved in any way in this horrific event, whether I was kind of acquitted or not. I'm not looking to question Amanda Knox's innocence or otherwise, and that's not my point. My point is, if I, as Amanda Knox, had been involved in such a life-changingly horrific thing for everybody involved, and as I say, she has been acquitted, I'm not sure that's kind of... I probably just want to sort of disappear and try and get on with my life and never be a public figure again. Not least a public figure who quite literally needs no introduction because everybody remembers how infamous I am.
Yeah, I find it all very peculiar. And she has been courting...
And also, what am I making jokes about?
I know. It's all a bit worrying, isn't it? Yeah, she was convicted for the November 2007... Gosh,
yes, okay, so nearly 20 years, nearly exactly 20 years.
Yeah, murder of a roommate in Italy, a trial that was highly publicised between Knox's conviction in 2009 and her acquittal 2 years later, and Amanda Knox was exonerated in 2015 by Italy's highest court. But she's been courting publicity since then.
I think
she
she's done
seems
something
to
on
really
Netflix,
like
I think.
being in the public eye. And like you, I think if I'd been involved in something like that, I might just try and disappear. But she's doing a comedy show. Like you said, what's she joking about? I don't know. I mean, I suppose we'll find out in the
But
fall.
then I guess,
I don't think I'll be going.
I'm not sure that's going to be top of my picks.
But she's doing it, and I do remember now, she's doing it at the Edinburgh Festival.
Oh, okay. That's quite big.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I remember reading about it earlier. It was at the... It's just popped into my head. It's at the Edinburgh Festival. Anyway, Amy and I are going to take a quick break while we ponder what she could be joking about, Amanda Knox. We're back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. And I'm just reading this front page, and again, I think this could lead a voter. I'm just saying. I'm erring on the side of caution, but I do believe that Daily Mail front page could lead you to change.
We've sort of
your
discussed
vote.
some of the issues.
We've discussed some of these issues. It's about Kenny Badenoch and what you can read it on the screen there. But it is one of those electioneering type situations. But the other story we've got here: dramatic plot twist as Blake Lively settles lawsuit with co-star Baldoni.
So this has been going on for absolutely months. So Blake Lively, the actress there, and she was in a film, It Ends With Us, which was some huge hit last summer, I think, and the director was get his first name, Baldoni, and this hit was absolutely huge. It's based on some novels. It was sort of about sort of complicated adult, relationships, and some suggestions of sort of domestic violence being covered in them. And then, yes, the actress Blake Lively spectacularly fell out with her co-star and director Baldoni, and this kind of multi-million-pound lawsuit has been going on for at least a year, and dragging in sort of other famous people, because sort of, if you read celebrity magazines like Heat, which obviously I don't, Blake Lively is sort of terribly good friends with huge stars like Taylor Swift, and then there were some sort of suggestions that like Taylor Swift would be bought in, and whose side was she going to pick in this sort of, he says, she says, huge multi-million-pound lawsuit. And it turns out they've sort of settled out of court, I assume, because they both looked at it and realised it was going to be kind of mutually assured destruction. Their sort of text messages and emails to each other were being poured through, and it was all just so grotty. Like, on the one hand, Blake Lively, actress, was saying that Baldoni had accused her of being fat, like a few months after she'd given birth, and Baldoni was actually saying, well, no, I was only asking your weight because I've got a back injury and I was meant to pick you up during this dance scene. So it was just all this kind of really salacious-y sort of, my God, what are you people arguing about?
Yeah.
You clearly just fell out at some point. Like, you clearly just ended up, like, not liking each other.
Why do you have to sue each other?
Why are you suing each other for multi-millions of pounds? And, yes, exposing sort of the, I don't know, petty squabbles, is that what you call it? I've never been on a multi-million-pound, sort of film set, but if that's the way they were sort of carrying on, it surprises me they managed to make the film at all. And I think the Mail...
You are very well briefed
for somebody who doesn't read Heat. I know. Because I also think the Mail has missed a trick here, because, as I say, the film that Blake Lively and her co-star Baldoni made together was called It Ends With Us. So why did the Daily Mail not go with It Ends Here or something, or do some like bad? So just kind of editorially, I think they missed a
or it ends
twist.
with us and then a $sign, US dollars.
There we go. You and I could have.
We could have done that.
Could have done a headline writing job.
Brilliant. Let's become sub-editors. It would take the two of us.
Something like that.
Split the salary.
Absolutely.
Right. Oh, the Daily Star. Who are? Bite-mare. Spider attacks surge. With great power comes great responsibility. Doctors are seeing a rise in the number of folk. That word folk isn't used enough, is it really? With attending hospital with spider bites. Experts are blaming false widows. I was just going to say I wouldn't know a false widow if it bit me, but that's probably not right.
So a couple of things about this, like just a reminder for anybody who doesn't, with great power comes great responsibility. Is a line from Spider-Man. See, I
didn't know that.
Oh, well, so that's the famous Spider-Man quote. Also not in Heat magazine. Just topping up with my Marvel comic knowledge. And also, look, I think I'm right in saying that the UK doesn't have any indigenously sort of poisonous or dangerous spiders. I mean, I think you can get a spider bite, but it's a bit sort of, mosquito bitey. Yes, not very nice. I mean, I also, I don't love spiders. I'm not terrified of them. But I just think this is a bit unfair of the Daily Star to just kind of blow up a spider that big, when in reality it's probably like the size of your fingernail or something. And of course anybody even vaguely squeamish is going to shudder at that. And then what instantly comes to my mind is the sort of, that statistic you occasionally read, which the average person over the course of a year will just sort of swallow 12 spiders.
What?
Sorry, I don't mean deliberately, but just, this is quite a widely known statistic that that just sort of being asleep or whatever, and most spiders are sort of really tiny.
Why are they crawling in my mouth?
Well, they're not. I don't think they're like deliberately like crawling in. It's just a sort of.
What?
I don't think I've just made.
They didn't get consent.
No, what I was merely saying is most spiders you will come across sort of in life in Britain are sort
I'm
of
not sleeping ever
tiny small things that you don't even notice, not this sort of
And I felt
whopper.
bad. I had a shower the other day and I
you
didn't
washed
have
one
my
down.
glasses on, and I noticed a spider at the back end of the bath, and my shower's obviously at the front end of the bath, and I felt bad. I tried not to spray that with water, and I was pretty convinced that I hadn't killed it, and then when I got out of the bath and went to move it, it was dead, and I felt that I do not feel bad about that now.
Okay, so if you want to live and thrive, let a spider walk alive.
Well, I didn't mean to drown it, but
No, I
they're
know, but you
meaning
must
to
have
fall
heard.
in my mouth.
You must have heard that saying. My grandma
I haven't
always
heard that
If you
saying.
want to live and thrive, let a spider walk alive.
Right, well, apparently all 650 spider species in the UK are venomous.
Oh.
But
not
none
deadly.
are deadly, and only about 12 to 14 species can pierce the human skin. They're pretty rubbish then, aren't they? The noble false widow, Cetoda nobilis, is the most venomous, capable of causing painful bites with symptoms like swelling and nausea. But severe reactions are rare and often caused by secondary infections. So they're all venomous, but they haven't got teeth enough to bite you.
No, but also the other
Well,
thing.
what's the point in them being venomous then?
Well, because I see some of it, they have to bite things that they catch in their web, no? Would that not be what the venom is for? Because that's the other thing, is obviously, lots of times spiders are catching, mosquitoes and flies and actually horrid things that we don't want around.
But I'm eating 12 a year.
I think you're strongly.
How many calories
I
are in
think
a
you're
spider?
strongly aligning what I said by sort of accidentally the consumption of literally eating. I'm not suggesting you literally pile them on your plate.
No, I
and
know,
sort of
but there are vegans that are also eating spiders.
But it's not a deliberate act. I think it's sort of in your sleep thing when, if your sort of mouth falls
Yes,
open
but there are
and there's
vegans listening to this now.
there's dust particles and, the tiny little things.
But they're meat.
I feel like bringing
think.
out this statistic is not the most controversial thing anyone's ever said on your programme.
It feels pretty much like it is, to be fair.
So I
want to know. I do want to know how many calories are in a spider.
So the
I don't want to put weight on. Just
when I
'cause
say
they're
I'm
crawling into
not, when I
my
say I'm
mouth.
not scared of them, I'm not scared of sort of household ones that you get in the UK because years ago as a child I used to live in Zimbabwe, and in Zimbabwe genuinely you would have spiders that's the size of your hand,
Like in Australia.
but they would sit like completely flush to the wall. And you were always told actually to leave them because then when they're sort of slightly raised off the wall, that's when they're eating a horrid bug, which actually you want because mosquitoes, malaria, etc. Out in Africa, the spiders are actually not interested in you. So when you see them there and they're raised, they're eating, a horrid bug, which you do want. The look on your face is literally, Amy, please stop talking about spiders. No, but I used to find it terrifying going to the bathroom. I just remember the corridor we used to have. And I'm not saying it was like some scene out of The Mummy, but there would be,
it's
the
like
odd
in Australia.
big
I was in Australia for a
spider.
year.
But you do need to leave them. The spiders are not interested in you as a human. They are interested in you in the bugs.
Well, they're interested in being eaten.
But again, you
interested in
seem to think
crawling
this is
into
a
my
very
mouth.
you seem to think this is a very proactive thing the spider is doing. I think it's more a sort of happenstance, like the way the spider at the end of your bath didn't mean to be in the way of your plug hole, but sort of something happened to him.
Well, it certainly did after the shower.
Well,
'cause he
yeah, so,
died.
and as you say, you're feeling markedly less guilty about that.
I really
Who
am,
knows?
because
Had
he
you-
could have crawled
I was
into my
about to say,
mouth.
had you not washed him down the plug hole, he might have crept his little way.
No, I didn't. I even didn't do that, even though I was fairly convinced he was dead. Oh, I'm actually guessing gender here. I didn't know it personally, but I put it on the side of the bath because I thought, well, if it dries out and
He
it isn't
might,
dead, he might.
yeah.
She, it would not gender non-specific, might have just crawled away. I don't know what happened to it. I must check tonight. Actually.
Well, probably did crawl away. It's probably literally
It's
paused, like on your bedside,
in my tummy.
in your bedside table, waiting just to.
That's just not right. That's not acceptable. That's just not acceptable. Got a nice message here. They say, "Hi, Petrie, can I just say, Amy is so cute, especially when she laughs.
That's so. Thank you very much.
So nice.
That's very nice.
Especially when she's torturing me, you mean. Anyway, let's take a break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie, and with me is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Daily Telegraph, Met seeks UK trial for the Madeleine suspect. This is that German Christian Brunneker. I think it Brunneker. Anyway,
Brunneker.
Yeah, to stand trial for the abduction and murder of Madeleine McCann. The Telegraph can reveal one of Scotland Yard's most senior officers is leading a push to charge the German suspect before the 20th anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance next year. I thought that he'd been found to not be responsible by German police.
Well, I mean, the guy's an absolute wrong 'un.
He is a wrong 'un,
because he's been in prison and has done unequivocally all sorts of horrible things. And then of the many things that have been investigated around and written about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann 19 years ago. This year, he was in the area at the time. He matched some descriptions. I think it was last year, after being released from prison for not that offence, but something else horrific. He was put on trial for this, and again, I think it was one of those circumstances where he was acquitted, but in a way that sort of that wasn't proof of evidence, if you like. There was still a certain amount of suspicion, certainly by the authorities, and other evidence circumstantial around him, which I should imagine is why the Met Police might still be seeking for some redress in the UK system, because obviously you can't be tried twice for the same thing under the German system. That doesn't preclude him from being tried here. The difficulty the Met might have is that the German system does not allow for a German citizen to be extradited to a non-European country. However, that's not a complete no, because as the article details, there is a way that perhaps he could be extradited to Portugal and then Portugal could extradite him to the UK. That there may be something that sort of the switcheroo of those three.
Depends on the will to do it.
Depends on the will to do it. But I don't think. Well, I mean, clearly the German authorities did as much as they absolutely could to try and get him last year. And as I say, I mean, the guy's an absolute wrong one anyway.
It would seem an extraordinary coincidence to have somebody like that
matching a description in the same area
who has been prosecuted for things similar to. It would just be. I'm not a fan of coincidence.
No, and by the way, when I say he's an absolute wrong one, I'm not saying thereby done, dusted. No. I am saying, well, look, okay, the German system has gone through everything it could, but if the Met still think that there's a way that they could have a go, with the willingness in terms of kind of extradition agreements, as just outlined as reported in the Telegraph, then okay, if it looks like there is an evidential base of circumstantial witness evidence, perhaps things that actually weren't, because obviously the German system does have a different standard of evidence than the UK one does. So if there are other things on the basis of which the UK justice system thinks it's worth having a go, I don't think there's any way other justice systems on the continent wouldn't be willing to facilitate that in some way.
Yeah, it's an interesting story if they do manage to.
I just don't think this needs to get bound up in anything to do with Brexit or anything like that. I think this is entirely a divorce. Clearly the Germans wanted to go after him. They did as far as they could. If the UK police think there are still things to be quite literally prosecuted against him, then hopefully everybody would find a way to work through that together. It's, Germany doesn't want somebody awful to escape justice. No. Portugal doesn't want somebody awful to escape justice.
No, and it's one of the biggest cases in the world, isn't it?
So there's no one in that jigsaw that would want to frustrate it if it would be possible to move ahead in that way.
Yeah, I agree. The other story they've got here, which is 2 pubs close every day this year after the tax grab by Reeves. 161 pubs have shut their doors for good in the first 3 months of the year.
Oh, I find this so upsetting.
So do I. I've seen them round by me shutting.
No, I know. And also, I could say something to me like, oh, I love a pub, probably spent too much money. And actually, I probably definitely have spent too much time and money in my sort of 20s in them. But pubs are more than... they are more than going out and getting absolutely sort of blotto
water. Yeah, we used to meet up on a Sunday lunch, go through the papers.
Read the papers.
We all wanted the Sunday sport.
My literally local, which does do a very nice Sunday roast. You can pop in there, and there's a couple of literal locals who've been going to that pub for 30 years, and then there's a couple of old boys. I don't mean to sound pejorative about that. I just mean they must be in their, I'm going to say 70s, if not 80s. And they always sit in the same 2 seats. And they will be there for about, 5 or 6 hours of an afternoon, sharing the 1 copy of the Racing Post, probably only having like 2 pints apiece. But that's part of their day, and it's part, and obviously the barmaids and the bar servers know them and always have a chat with them.
The community,
and the owners know them and know their favourite drink and all of this kind of thing. So it's not just about groups of 20-year-olds going out and having as many rounds of cheap tequila shots on whatever 2-for-1 promotion. It's really not. That for me is not what the sort of pubs are about. And always walking around London, I sort of find the buildings fascinating anyway, but when you can so recognise a converted Victorian Edwardian pub, do you know what I mean? I'm always sort of rather envious whoever has gone to live in one of those flats. And certainly around South London, it's practically every 3rd or 4th street corner is literally like, that would have been a pub. And if this rate at which they're closing is, well, there aren't going to be any left, and then where are people going to go? And as I say, not just for downing shots on a Saturday night, it's actually the meeting. And my local pub does during the week. It has bring your baby life drawing classes, It has a jigsaw club. It has all these other kind of things, which, you know, it is much more than a boozer. It's a proper bit of the community.
Yeah, and they're keeping a check on, you know, old Bill and old
Yes, exactly.
Ernest,
like, honestly, if
making sure they're okay,
that's
if they didn't turn up.
That's the surest far away that somebody would be alerted to, oh, actually, maybe somebody should just go and have a check on them if they didn't turn up for their, you know, pint of Guinness at 2:30.
Yeah, it is a real sadness. There's another story on the front of the Telegraph that I want to address here because it has been in the news today. More than 20 Brits are trapped on a cruise ship after the outbreak of hantavirus, which is a rat-borne virus, and they're stuck in this ship. 3 people have already died. Some are really very ill.
It's respiratory,
and it's a 40% death rate with this hantavirus. So they don't know what to do with these people on the ship, and it's got an incubation period of about a week to 2 weeks.
Yeah, so questions about that was whether, because I believe it's a husband and wife, one of the 2 of the 3 people that have died, and then a third person. So it's entirely unclear where it's kind of come from, as in, did somebody...
Yes, because human transmission is very low.
So it's far more likely it comes from contact with rat saliva or urine or some kind of rat product, want of a better way of putting it. So it's not clear.
Which is why you shouldn't drink beer out of a bottle.
Because rats might have weed on it.
So even though you flip the tin off, the lid off, there can still be rat urine.
You can take my spider chat, and I'm going to take your rat urine beer bottle chat. But
do you drink out of the bottle?
I do. That's why I suddenly thought. Cause I will. No, I wouldn't in a pub. But if I'm sort of having a beer, you know, somebody says, you know, do you want a Peroni? I probably would just take the bottle so they don't have an extra glass to.
Yeah.
Oh, I now feel quite ill. Thank you for that.
We're both going to leave the studio
each having learnt something we didn't really want to know.
The claim that people accidentally eat the average of 12 spiders per year while sleeping is entirely false.
We're all very happy that I've been proved wrong then.
Yeah, my story about rat wee on bottles is not false.
Well, haven't you got something to be proud of this evening?
And also, just in case I did eat a spider, they're generally less than a calorie each. Somebody has actually done the science on that.
That's so brilliant that somebody has actually looked that up. So, to reassure you on every level, not just the non-consumption, but if you were to have done the calorific...
It's my fabulous team for you. They look after
content.
Me. Yeah, 1 calorie. I can afford that. Anyway, this hantavirus stuff... This is one of the... And not that I've ever heard of hantavirus until today, but that is a very good reason not to ever go on a cruise.
No, I'm really not making light of this horrible situation, but the idea of being stuck on a cruise ship for any reason, let alone one because there's some poisonous rodent running around, is literally for me the stuff of night, like horror.
Well, you often hear of diseases spreading around these ships, don't you?
There's the Netflix documentary about it.
Oh,
It's called, I think it's literally called Shipwrecked, and there was this massive, there's a couple of thousand people, and basically everybody got some version of norovirus. So all of the facilities kind of went down. So people were essentially, I don't know, people essentially
hanging
having
over the side of the boat.
And in bags from both ends, having to go to
Yeah, just
this conversation.
I don't know how anyone would want to be locked in a place with other people. Anyway, I just know. Let's very quickly on some good news. A man who these are the stories that you have to bring out when it's purdah, when it's election purdah. A man whose testicular tissue was frozen before he underwent chemotherapy as a child to be retransplanted 16 years later has been able to produce sperm in a groundbreaking fertility trial, which is extraordinary. That is an amazing story, isn't it? And actually could help other men with
exactly.
With
women
issues of
have been able
fertility.
to do that with their eggs. If there's parity that men are able to do it in the circumstances they need to with their sperm. That's incredible.
It's incredible. As a child, you have that, just a tissue removed and transplanted 16 years later when he was clear of cancer, is absolutely amazing. So that's a good bit of news, isn't it?
No, that really
that is a nice bit of news to end on. The rest of the papers are all politics and talking about the pollsters and what's going to happen with the election, which I can't wait until that is over. None of us can. But there you go. Amy Fisher, thank you very much.
Very nice to see you.
Ratwe, just remember.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, it is your chance to talk back, and I want to talk to you about what's going on in this country at the moment. Are you angry?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Petrie here. I just got a telling off from Anthony here. He said, poor Amy's face. Did you have to get your own bag? Okay. It was a public service announcement. I was helping her because somebody told me that once when I used to drink a lot of Grolsch. You know, the one with the flip lid and you put the lime in it, right? I used to drink that all the time. And one time I was drinking it and the guy one of the guys that I was with, there was a whole group of us, said, have you wiped that bottle down before you drank out of it? And I was like, no. And he said, well, you should, because when they're kept in cellars, the rats who are incontinent and mice who are incontinent, right, they wee as they just walk along. They walk all over the bottles. And I've never done it since. Well, I have drunk a Grolsch, but not out of the bottle, and certainly not without wiping it. So I've known that for years, that these creatures are incontinent and wee over everything. So that's a public service announcement. I was merely trying to help my friend. But you are right, it did feel good to get my own back as well. Right, moving on to what Talk Back is all about this morning, is this poll that has come out, and it says that 79% of Britons predict riots this summer. That the anger in this country is going to bubble over the top. 83% of us are braced for a rise in shoplifting because of soaring bills. I don't know whether they're suggesting that they will shoplift. I don't know, but they're braced for it. And 73% of people are worried that they will see a rise in homelessness and people going hungry. Pollster said, this poll shows we're heading into an anxious summer. People are really worried about the cost of living now the Iran war has sent bills up again. They want the country to get a grip on the crisis and fear if we don't get a grip on it. Inflation could rocket to 6.2% in the wake of the war, and the cost of living is now the top priority for government, and things will be tough. So I often get messages from you when we're talking about things like benefits or social issues on this programme. I often get the odd message coming through saying, "Oh, we're on the brink. We're on the brink. We're going to explode. There's going to be a riot. We're going to riot. We're going to take to the streets." And I just want to test that this morning to see just how on the edge are you. Now, you may not be feeling particularly on the edge today because you've had a lovely bank holiday, extra day off. You may be contemplating your summer break coming up. But when you think about how angry Britain seems to be, and we were talking about this really, about the anger levels in the country last week and why there's so much hatred in the country, which is a symptom of anger, right? This sort of feeds into that a bit. And are you on the edge? Do you feel like you are on the edge of not being able to cope anymore? And do you feel that is getting closer and closer, that actually one more thing and it would push you over the edge? So that's what I want to examine really this morning, is to see just how real this situation is. Because as I was saying earlier, I live in London. It's a very different country, I think, London. And I think that we live in somewhat of a bubble. We don't see the cost of living crisis so much here. Lots of people feel the cost of living crisis, but it's not as visible because London is a major business hub, it's a major tourist hub. So we see all the restaurants are still full and the bars are still full. They may not be with Brits, right? They may not be with people like you and me who can't afford to go out and eat or can't afford to go to the pub. But we don't see it. It's not as obvious, I think, as it is in other parts of the country. So I'm relying on you, really, to burst my London bubble, to let me know what it's like in the rest of the country. Are we seeing levels of anger? Are you aware of levels of anger and frustration with the way the country is being run? Do you see, the restaurants empty, the pubs empty? Is it more evident than it is in London? Like I said, for all the reasons I've mentioned, we get a lot of tourists here. You can't tell if somebody is a tourist or a Londoner. But that doesn't mean Londoners aren't feeling the cost of living crisis. It just means that we don't see it as much. We see people with, big shopping bags, but again, they could be tourists. We see people in the designer stores, but again, probably tourists. We don't really get a sense of what the rest of the country is like in London. And that's just the truth of it. But I am aware there is a different world outside of London. I just don't see it. So you need to educate me. Tell me what the levels of anger are in your town, amongst your friends, amongst the people that you know. Is there frustration that you can see boiling over? Is there a sense that people are that close to the edge? And what would push them over? Even if it's not you, if you're aware of people who are really worried, really concerned, that one thing, we're all skirting that line, aren't we? That if suddenly if the car broke down, or if the washing machine broke, or one more bill comes in, then it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So I know there's frustration out there, but I wonder if that is going to tip into anger. Do you see that happening in your area? Do you feel the tension rising where you are? Just people bumping into you, or people being rude, or people being aggressive? And most of that comes from fear. There is a definite economic fear at the moment. But I would just be interested to know if that sort of that lulled into sense of security as we are in London, what's really going on outside of the city, being aware that there is bubbling resentment going on in the country at the moment. So I'd love to hear from you, just to educate me, really, because I don't like not knowing stuff, right? But this is the kind of thing, the social stuff, that you don't read about really in papers. And if I do, I don't trust it. I want to hear from you, who I do trust, as to what's really going on around the country, with dissatisfaction, with anger, maybe with fear, with definite economic fear and worries, and what might tip people into taking to the streets. It's incredibly, dare I say, un-British, I think, to riot. I think that it's unusual to see that kind of bubbling into street violence. But I don't know. I don't have my finger on that pulse. I don't know what's happening. So please let me know. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you back. And you can text, put the word talk and then your message to 87222. And Gary says, I really do see a massive increasing in tension within the UK in all aspects, whether that be on the left or right. The continued anger at our useless governments, past and present, and the growing polarising differences from fractioned groups and political views. I worry, but the future at this point doesn't look in any way positive. Riots, says Gary, are inevitable. And that's Gary in Glasgow. So do you agree with that? Do you believe that riots are inevitable? That people's anger will just burst over that line and become uncontrollable? Like I said, give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can also leave a voice note at that number as well. Try to keep it under a minute, but you can leave a voice note at that number as well. Heather has called from South Ayrshire. Hi, Heather. Good morning.
Hi, what's my bugbear? Oh, God, there's a hell of a lot of bugbear going on. With all these demonstrations going on around England, and I'm seeing it right now on Talk as I'm watching your show. And I've been watching Talk and GB News a lot, and when I see all this going on, and what upsets me the most about these attacks on Jewish people, our Jewish friends, and it really upsets me the most about this. All these attacks, and especially these girls and women who have been sexually abused by migrants, by men, and they don't feel protected, and us women, it feels like we don't feel protected.
Women are. I mean, I do have to say that, the violence against women and girls in this country is an absolute crisis, but it's not just migrant men. We can't be in denial about the numbers of men that are attacking women, and they're not just migrant men.
And I'm talking about men particularly, because when you see misogyny going on in the air and everything's going upside down and not turning out right, and what's causing all this tension is nothing's going right. That's why people are getting so damn upset. Anger, it's a mixture of feelings going on in the air, where it's anger, frustration, confusion, where people's not being honest, not being truthful, not being right. Same with politicians, where some of these politicians do lie, and we get really annoyed by that, with the politicians lying. When
I think the political frustration in this country is absolutely disgraceful, because we've been let down by just about everybody in the last 20 years, haven't we? And of whatever political persuasion, it just seems that.
Do I predict a riot in summer? We don't know what's going to happen around the corner in summer, because summer is next month in June. Anything could happen between now and June and July and August.
Well, we know one thing is going to happen for certain, and that is that prices are going to rise, right? We know that for certain because of what's happening around the world. So we know that we're going to see inflation rise. We know we're going to see interest rates rise. We're potentially going to see higher taxation coming at the end of the summer with Rachel Reeves. We are going to see some stuff we do know that is coming down the pipe.
And a high rise in shoplifting as well. It's like a pandemic of shoplifting going on, looting, and these young yobs. When I was talking to Julia about it the other week, about these yobs, these young people in their teens running in stores and causing no end of trouble and causing no end of problems and putting fear in people and stuff like that. And when I see the police officer going in one particular supermarket trying to contain the situation, thank God the police are in that supermarket trying to do their jobs. It's about time. There's a lack of discipline, and it's about time the police needs to do their jobs properly. And we need discipline in this country. There's a big problem. There's a lack of respect, lack of whatever. But
is it enough? Is it enough to drive people onto the streets with violence in a riot, do you think?
Anything could happen. A pressure cooker, politicians adding more fuel to the fire. Because when you talk about the cause of these tension and chaos, it's down to the politicians in the House of Commons, how they behave in the House of Commons. The chaos starts up in there, and it brews out from the House of Commons onto the streets, and no wondering why the politicians can't do their jobs properly. People are not thinking straight.
I mean, I'm trying to think about the last sort of riots that happened. I think that was the poll tax, wasn't it? Wasn't that
Brixton?
Brixton riots, yeah. I mean, I just wonder if we would ever see that level of violence.
Toxtiff, and there's been other riots
but these were all kind of decades ago, weren't they?
Yeah, and when you get an upsurge in tension, it could bubble into an uprising situation.
I mean, you're right. The thing with a riot is it starts with a spark, doesn't it? And then just everybody piles in. It's not planned. I don't think. I mean, the poll tax started as a protest and turned into a riot, but and that was actually some really bad policing that took place that day. I remember that well, and there was some bad kettling practices and things like that created fear and anger and exploded that into becoming a riot. And maybe that's why we don't see protests turn into riots now. And
well,
maybe
it's about time the temper needs to cool down a little bit, because we hope and pray that we won't have an uprising situation of riots and civil unrest. Let's pray and hope or whatever to stop people in their tracks, because.
But you're right. You're right, Heather.
It's about controlling your anger. It's about controlling your emotions a bit.
But when people feel,
calm yourself down, or go out for a walk, or do something positive for a change.
But I guess when people feel that they're not being heard, they demand being seen. Right, and that is the issue that all governments have had, that a lot of us don't feel heard and haven't felt heard for a very long time. And I guess that, even being told, look, this is a democracy, let your feelings be known at the ballot box, that a lot of people don't believe that that's going to achieve what they want. So if they're not heard, then they have to be seen.
It's like when people don't listen to you, you feel upset. You feel that people are being ignorant or not listening to you, or you're not having your views taken lightly and seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like with me sometimes when I put my views across, and when people don't actually listen to what my point of view is, I get really upset. I feel like people have been pushed on the edge, and feels like they're doing it on purpose to hurt me.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I think a lot of people feel that, and which is why when I take calls, I let people speak, I let them have their say. I may not always agree, but it's about being heard. And I think that, like I said, if people aren't heard, they want to be seen, and if being seen means being out on the streets, then that's what they'll do. So it's down to everybody to make sure that people are heard and listened to. Heather, thank you very much indeed. Heather, they're talking about the frustrations and the anger, and she's right. Riots just happen out of nowhere. It's just a spark in a crowd will kick things off. So she's right in saying that we don't know what could create that or what might create that. But the fact that if people are at that heightened level of frustration and anger, it's more likely to happen than if we were all a lot calmer. Heather, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to take a very quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and we're talking about whether you're on the edge or not, and what might just push you over the edge. And this is after this poll done by a common, it's called the More in Common think tank, who did this poll, and they found that 79% of us Brits are predicting riots this summer. That we are so angry and so frustrated by the world that we're in at the moment that we are predicting violence on the streets. And like I said, I hear this all the time from you guys. I get little messages, oh, we're on the edge, you know, da, da. But I need to know from you where you are in the country, if you feel that, or if you don't feel that. You don't feel that we're anywhere near to being on the edge. And we were just looking up the last major riot in this country started in London. It was 15 years ago when, do you remember, a guy called Mark Duggan was believed to be carrying a gun, and he was shot while he was in his car by police and killed. And I remember the scenes of the family and friends gathering outside, I think it was Scotland Yard, but anyway, a large police station in London, and suddenly this riot kicked off, and it was all over Tottenham, it went all over London, and then it spread around the country. So that's one of those unpredictable sparks that Heather and I were talking about, that sort of that moment that you can't foresee, you can't plan for. It's just that moment that happens that creates this explosion of violence on the streets. That was 15 years ago. You know, since then the world has changed, and some would say not for the better. And I certainly think that people are feeling more frustrated and more angry than they certainly were 15 years ago by various political decisions, by various political parties, right? We also had COVID. We've had the cost of living crisis going up because of Ukraine and Russia, and then we've got the Iran war, and that's creating another explosion, if you forgive the expression, in the cost of living going up and up and up and up and up, and it will not stop going up for at least another year if it were to stop even now. So there's a lot of frustration, and there's a lot of frustration because a lot of it is out of our power, and a lot of it is out of our electoral power as well. The power that we have as a democracy is in our voting, but even that, the world has sort of superseded any decision making that we may choose or choose not to make, because it's out of our control. And often things that are out of our control are what frustrate us the most and anger us the most. I am a total control freak, right, in my world. And I can't bear not having control over things. It does frustrate me, and it does sometimes anger me. So I just wonder if you feel like the country's on the verge of that kind of street violence, or whether you think it isn't. That actually, no, we're not. That's not us. We don't do that. Although, like we said with the Mark Duggan case, that just came from nowhere. So give me a call. Let me know around the country if you're sensing that anger is that close to the surface. 0344 499 1000, and send me a message as well. Text the word talk and then your message to 87222. Writing, Zarina says, the government is causing huge problems for the people of this country. As for writing, it's not really in our nature. I would urge us to write to our MPs. I stood up against the poll tax and it did not do me any good. And that's from Zarina. Yeah, but like I said, when people aren't heard, they need to be seen. And I wonder if that's going to push people. Sammy says, I don't actually get out so much, but oh my gosh, drivers, since fuel has gone up, people have got angrier and more stressed. I think that as well, actually. And I don't know whether it's because we're adding it to the fuel, or saying it's because of the fuel tax, or whether it's just because people are getting angrier, but they are getting angrier, no doubt. John is in West Lothian. Hello, John.
Very good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm remarkably well, considering the state of the country.
Yeah, aren't we all? Just struggling, getting on by.
Well, when you get to my age, you've got to.
When you get to my age, you've got no choice either.
Oh, you're young. I mean a youngster. A youngster.
Bless your heart. John, are we close to taking to the streets in this country?
No. I really don't believe we are. I think that we're basically, we'll get frustrated, we'll get intolerant about what's going on, but I don't believe that we're at that stage where we're going to go into the streets and riot again, unless there is something very, very unusual happens, and that could be the case. But what really frustrates, people, I think, is that the government of the day, whether it be in Westminster or in Holyrood, does not give us any hope. They do not give a positive message out there. They're terribly negative of everything, and all that they're trying to do, and I mean, forget what my politics might or might not be, is that they're all in it for themselves to survive. It's not about the people. And that I'm involved at a very minor level of community politics, very minor, and it is so frustrating that you do your best for the people that the community that you work in, and they are thinking about themselves. They don't make decisions based on the bigger picture.
I would agree with that. And I do think that is a frustration, because the distance between all politicians of all persuasion and the people that they are there to serve has become greater and greater and greater. And I think that Westminster is a singularly... Well, I think all government hubs, right? So you're talking about Holyrood, you're talking about in Wales, the Synod there, and in Northern Ireland, right? So you've got all these different hubs of politics, and each one seems to fail, no matter what their politics are, the people that they are there to serve. Don't they? All of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they've got away from local democracy, which I am 100% for, that local people know what's best for them. They may not have all the answers, they may not understand the legislation in a big way, they may not understand the finances, but they understand what they want. And if governments of all levels listen to the people and what they need and what they want, they would actually spend their money so much better, it would be so much more productive, and we would actually have a happier community. But, I'm certainly, I worked with all people of all nationalities all over my, throughout my 70-odd years, that, racist people will say, they can point all the fingers they want. But when you've got people coming into the country that don't understand our philosophy and our beliefs and what makes us strong and why we want to work together, and then the people in charge do not enforce the basic principles of what's made us great over all these years. That, I think, is the biggest frustration that people will probably have.
I agree with that, and I think that even the most liberal person in the country would say that the immigration levels have been too high and too quick. Right, there's been no time when they talk about assimilating into a culture or a society. The Labour began it, the Tories continued it. Yep. Right, Labour opened the doors. the Tories kicked them even further open, right? So for over decades, and we've had this vast increase, and I can see that frustrates people. And like I said, even the most liberal think tanks are saying, look, it happened too quickly, and too many too quickly. Doesn't mean it would have failed if it had been spread out. It just isn't working at the moment. So that is a general frustration, and I do sense that. I do feel that. What annoys me, though, is the denial with which people live in this country to deny that it's our fault as well.
Yeah, and I think the other...
That really frustrates me, is people go, it's all them. You go, no, hang on a minute. We are just as capable of law breaking, of misogyny, of violence, of cheating, of scamming the system as they are, right? To deny that is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Petrie, the other thing that, you know, that people are getting more and more frustrated with, which I hear in the local community and the various organisations that I talk to, is the way in which people forget their nationality, forget anything else, is that the way they're abusing the system for the benefit system.
Oh,
you know,
it frustrates me as well.
That is probably a bigger problem overall, and the cost is horrendous. I mean, you know, I'm just one of these people that worked all their lives, and I know many people who have, and you know, you work terribly hard, and everybody else does, and yet these people. And what's annoying now is that you've got generations that are not doing it. Youngsters are not coming in, and they're not being made to go to colleges and you know, learn trades and things like that, because we're not just in the second generation, we're almost in the third generation of people that don't work, and they expect that the rest of the country will keep them. That is impossible. It is impossible for society to have that sort of work ethic, you know, that will actually keep people that just don't even think about it. And I know people that go 3 holidays a year and they've never worked in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the unfairness. I think we're a country based on fairness, right? And even down to the queuing thing. That's about fairness. That's about being there first, and so you get first dibs.
I've seen that, and I've seen that in Disney.
Yeah.
The people that that take the cues and just behave themselves are British, because we're so used to it.
Yeah, because it's about fairness. It's about being fair. I mean, you know, even if you get on a bus, you look around you see who was there. Even if it's not a queue of people, you know who was there first. You let them on first. It's about fairness. And what we can't stand in this country is to see that level of unfairness. And there is an awful lot of unfairness that is going on with the welfare system, which is destroying it for those people who really need it. And that's what makes me angry, is that they're saying, well, we'll have to cut disability, or we'll have to cut this. And you go, no, hang on a minute. It's not, that shouldn't be what we do. What we do is we stop people from claiming it who don't deserve it, who don't need it, not throw people out who do.
No, the whole thing was to help people who genuinely need it. And any family will need it at some stage in their lives, whether it be a redundancy, sickness, or anything else.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it's essential that we look after that.
But not want it.
Protect it. And protect it.
But not for people who just want that lifestyle. That's never what it was intended to be. And there was a headline today saying that 600,000 people are earning more on benefits than they could at work. Yeah. And that just makes you go, well, why am I working so hard? So I get it. I see the anger and I feel the anger. I'm as frustrated as you are about it. What I don't want, though, is somebody take a hatchet to it and throw the baby out with the bathwater, because it's a good system that we should have.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, you know, I worked all my life, and I took out a private pension because somebody told me when I was quite young that I should do it, because there may not be a health, a national pension there when I got to the age where I retired. But you know, you're still paying tax on it, and then you've got all these other people that are not willing to contribute anything, and that I think is a bigger frustration than almost anything else. I
agree, and again, governments have failed. All of them.
Yes,
have failed to address that basic principle of unfairness. And we all see it. It's in our everyday lives. John, thank you very much indeed. I've got to take a quick break, but that was John in West Lothian.
Across the U on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning. This is Talk and it is Petrie. And this is Talk Back, and that's what you're doing. And we're talking about this poll that says that 79% of Brits believe that there will be riots this summer, that we are right on the edge of taking to the streets in violence and dissent. And I'm just trying to figure out if that's really how we feel across the country. Some messages here I'd like to read out from Nigel. Says, I see anger every day because people are struggling financially or to find doctors or dentists. And most of the anger is because an ever increasing number of immigrants are getting everything for nothing and people are working harder and getting poorer. I can see that. I can see that makes us all angry. Snakebite says, I may not be in the UK right now, but I'm certain that the riots will begin over some disinformation. I won't be surprised at all. And then watch thieves working in trios, raiding supermarkets, one grabbing meats, one grabbing snacks, and one for beer. I saw that one a night in Camden. The trio bolted straight past the security guard and myself on the way out. Zarina says, when I was a kid, any adult could tell us off. Yeah, I was so used to that. Give us a clip around the ear and we would be respected. Shoplifting was not in our remit. Today, however, shoplifting is a way of life for some, and people like me will not confront them just in case they're violent or carry knives. I do not recall when this change took place, but the only people making huge profits from shopping are the thieves. It is really sad, isn't it, to see that this is how we're all feeling at the moment. Joanna says, everybody is so angry. I can see the possibility of riots. It's almost like the government is deliberately baiting people to cause riots so they can declare lockdowns, military curfews, and using surveillance technology to manage a major civil unrest with a dictatorship of complete control that they then can't remove. The government doesn't listen to the electorate. No government has listened to us, doing things that they said they wouldn't and that was not even in their manifesto. The list of lining their own pockets, not taking responsibility for anything and making our streets dangerous. They have driven our economy down so far with socialism and not spending on priorities that we can no longer even protect ourselves. I can't disagree with much of that. I tell you that for nothing. Kevin is in Basingstoke. Kevin, good morning. Are we really that angry that we're prepared to take violence onto the streets?
Well, we are angry, but it's deliberate. We're fed so much false information that it makes people angry. I mean, some of the things I heard, some of your callers, she was saying about rape. I mean, you put her right. I mean, there's sort of like 100,000 or even more, I can't remember the amount, of women and children that have gone to the police because of, allegations of sexual abuse. But the caller just said, migrants. And
yeah, and this is what worries me. It's not that migrants haven't done it, and it's not that migrants don't do it, but it is the utter denial that British people do these things too. That I find frustrating. It's not. I'm not saying that they haven't done it. I'm not saying that migrants aren't responsible for rapes and rape gangs. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is yes, but we are as well, and it's that denial that disallows us to fix it because it's across society.
Most abuse is actually hidden. It's not reported.
Yeah, it is.
It's a family member.
Yeah.
So the statistics, are much higher than that. I mean, and what I heard somebody say about all this theft, shop theft. But there is a lot of shop theft. But there's lots of other theft that we don't talk about, like tax loopholes and tax avoidance. We don't hear about that, but that's just as big or even bigger.
Yeah, probably bigger.
Shop theft.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's so one-sided, isn't it? And it's like that big fuss about Keir Starmer's sunglasses and suits. I mean, that was in the media for so long, wasn't it? Mm. They was calling for them to, there was even a petition. They've got to get rid of the government because of that. But Nigel Farage was given £5 million. That's not really a big story, is it?
No, I agree, and some people are saying he had every right to that, and others are saying that he didn't. And you're right. There is a skew with news, and it always tends to be that it's easier to pick on poor, weak people. And talk about the criminality of what they do than it is to look at the rich people theft, which, as you said, is non-payment of tax or the non-dom status that they try to dodge through, or all of those things that we don't talk about because it's white collar and it's rich people that do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mention the names, but there's a certain politician that he tried to get away with millions in tax, and he had to pay $5 million back to the Inland Revenue. And another politician helped his friends avoid 40 million in tax. You know who I'm talking about.
I do know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, they talk about.
And there was another politician who didn't spend the right amount of money on their stamp duty and things like that. So yeah, we are, but that's not as easy as bashing benefits claimants, is it? It's much easier, much more popular, and much more visible to bash people on disability benefit.
Well, I heard you say there's 600,000 people that claim more on benefits than
they could earn.
People that are working.
Yeah.
But if you've got a couple with 3 kids, you live outside of London, you can only claim, I think it's 22,000. That's the maximum. If you live in London, the maximum is 25,000.
No, it goes up in lots of different ways. There's lots of different.
Sure about that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely 100% sure. 100% sure. There's a cap.
Right. Well,
there's a cap on universal credit, but there used to be before it was universal credit. Now, but then you get the extra child payments, then you get extra housing, and then you get extra this and you get extra that, and if you've got PIP on top of that, and if you've got disability on top of that, or carers allowance on top of that. So yes, there is to the hub. No, there are people. Honestly, there are people taking home 60, 70 grand in benefits. That's not a lie.
Well, no, when they say, oh, we've got all these immigrants coming over, and it's terrible. We haven't reached the birth replacement rate for 50 years.
No, and now it's never going to be. They're saying now it's on a downward slope. Listen, I hear you, Kevin, and I always love talking to you. Thank you for calling. I've got to take a very quick break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And I didn't want this bank holiday to pass by without the opportunity, if you didn't hear it earlier, for you to hear, because this man is a national treasure, right? He is all that is good in this country, and that is David Attenborough, who I've absolutely been in love with my whole life. And he reaches the age of 100 on Friday. And he's such an extraordinary man that it is worth replaying this in case you missed it. And even if you didn't miss it, it's worth listening to again. I was talking to the filmmaker and biographer Tony Lee Morrill about Sir David Attenborough and about how he was also a pen pusher, an exec, a clipboard holder at the BBC.
Oh, absolutely, yes. In the 1960s, after a career as a broadcaster, and as you probably know, he started as a trainee at the BBC in the early 50s, and he worked himself up through broadcasting as a presenter, most famously on Zoo Quest. And then in the mid-60s, he became a channel controller of BBC Two, quite extraordinary, and was very instrumental in commissioning some landmark productions, such as
Monty Python.
Yes, Kenneth Clark's Civilization, Jacob Bronowski's The Ascent of Man, yeah.
I mean, the man who brought us Monty Python's Flying Circus is extraordinary. But he was always into nature. He was always fascinated. He grew up in Leicestershire, and his father was an academic at the local university. So he was brought up around very smart people, but he was fascinated on getting on his bike and just going out into the countryside. What was he doing there?
Yes, that was one of my favourite parts of researching his biography, his childhood in Leicester. As you said, his father, Frederick, was a principal at the Leicester College there. And he was the middle of three brothers, most famously Richard Attenborough was his older brother. And he would spend a lot of time in the limestone quarries because Leicester was built on this great foundation of Jurassic bed, and that's where he really fell in love with fossils and would go collecting. But I also found out a wonderful story because at the Leicester Zoology Department there was a pond outside, and he would collect the newts and sell them to the staff. So very entrepreneurial, even at that young age. I think it was like 10 years old, but that's where his fascination started, in the quarries, in the back gardens and the college campuses.
And he never, ever lost his love for that. It must have been particularly frustrating for this man that we've grown to know to be a pencil pusher, to be, you know, even if at the BBC, to be, you know, in that sort of role rather than, you know, digging around for fossils and looking at interesting creatures. It must have been frustrating.
It was, and I have a whole chapter on his broadcasting career at the BBC, where it's called the View from the Sixth Floor, when he's, you know, right up at the top of the hierarchy, and he was offered the Director General job, which he didn't really want to do. That, as you said, more kind of paper shuffling and the politics, and he was really yearning to go back into the field, having done all those years on ZooQuest, and he came back with series like Eastwoods with Attenborough, and that obviously led on to his huge and most famous landmark, Life on Earth.
How did that happen for him, Life on Earth? I mean, was he just that so natural when he talked about the natural world that they couldn't wait to sign him up? Or did he have to go and beg and say, look, I've got this great idea?
I certainly don't think he had to beg, because he was very much, even though he was based in London as controller of BBC Two at the time, and then he was very much talking to the BBC Natural History Unit in Bristol, which is, you know, very famous institution and part of the BBC. So he knew what they were doing. And because of series, he was working with producers such as Richard Brock, a very famous producer. He worked with Eastwood with Attenborough, and then on The Living Planet. So he seemed like an ideal figure because of his background in broadcasting, his just passion for natural history, and obviously his just awareness of the huge mechanics that goes into making these landmark series such as Civilization or The Ascent of Man. So I think he was a natural choice for it.
And he just had this mesmerizing way of talking, of speaking, that even if you were the greatest biologist in the world sitting next to a child, both would understand. You didn't talk down to the very brilliant, and he didn't exclude the very ignorant. I mean, that's a real skill to be able to do that.
It is, and the title, you know, Our Planet, His Voice, I actually investigated that. I really wanted to know where did he get his diction from, his tones? And actually, Richard Attenborough is a clue there, because Richard would stage plays in Leicester, and he would recruit David to become part of his kind of repertory theatre, even though David had no interest later on in becoming an actor or in plays. But as a young man or as a teenager, he trained theatrically with Richard, and obviously learnt his kind of diction and at the Leicester Zoology, at the museum, and his enthusiasm for animals. So that's a really good link with his brother, I think.
Yeah, it is. But he also had a way of simplifying quite complex issues and making you go along with him. Was he scripted? Did he have this incredible encyclopedic knowledge of what he was talking about, or did he need to just learn that as he went along?
Well, he has a great memory and a fondness of books. So he then went to Clare College at Cambridge and read the naturalists as he had done as a child, Alfred Russel Wallace and Charles Darwin, obviously. So he was very much trained at Cambridge as well. So that encyclopedic knowledge and that enthusiasm and curiosity, which he also learned at Leicester Museum, he spent a lot of his childhood there as well.
Again, with him travelling all around the world, I mean, this was a new form of documentary making, right, where the presenter could be seen, where he was engaging with the animals. One of the most famous ones was when he was cuddled by a gorilla, which I understand only recently found out that they had to smuggle that out of the footage of that out of the country. They nearly had it taken off them. But there's so much about his personality that came through with his documentary making, and that was really seminal. That was a real change in the way these